It's new play day on Shakesyear, new play day on Shakesyear. It's play day, new play day on Shakesyear. Yay, it's new play day. We get to start another one. And guess what? I just noticed as I was preparing to make this video that we only have 8 plays left to go, which sounds a little, and it probably still translates to like another year and a half of this, but we've gotten through a lot of Shakespeare already, and now we have made it to The Tempest, which is fun. It's classified as a comedy. It was one of the later plays written in Shakespeare's canon, and there is some speculation that the character of Prospero, who's sort of the lead of the play, is semi-autobiographical of Shakespeare, or at least he put a lot of himself into that character, which might make a little bit more sense with some of the later monologues, because the play is full of fantasy and fairies and magic and shipwrecks and all sorts of stuff. And it's also, in a weird way, sort of a palindromic play, or at least I think of it that way, with the exception of the very first scene. It feels like the setup for each scene sort of bookends, like it starts one way and gets down to this, and then it goes back, and we've got the same locations with the same people as stuff sort of sorts itself out and that sort of a thing. But it's a fun and interesting play with some very famous words and some very famous characters. You may have heard of the character Caliban. We're going to get to know Caliban. There is a name used in this play that became a Doctor Who villain, which I don't know if y'all can tell, but I'm a huge Doctor Who fan through all of this. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, Doctor Who stole from Shakespeare, which they have many times. But anyway, it's a fun little thing to note. So anyway, let's get started on The Tempest. Today we get to hear from Miranda in Act 1, Scene 2. Oh, and believe it or not, in this play, he denoted acts and scenes in the folio version, so there isn't going to be any weird confusion about where we are in the play. So that'll be fun, a nice change of pace from the last couple that we've worked on. So since we hear from Miranda in Act 1, Scene 2, we first need to hear what happened in Act 1, Scene 1. And Act 1, Scene 1, we're on a boat in a storm, and it's a massive storm, and the boatswain and the people working on the boat are doing everything that they can to try to keep the boat together and to keep all of the people alive. But then we also have a whole bunch of noble passengers who we'll get to learn more about later. But we have Antonio and Alonso and Gonzalo and Sebastian and Ferdinand and all these other fancy Italians, like Italian nobility on the ship. They are actually traveling with the King of Naples. So as the boat is getting tossed all over the place in this storm, they come up and they go to the boatswain and they're like, don't you know who's on board this ship? And the boatswain's like, yes, and I want to save my own life too, so, you know, cool your heels, cool your jets, go back below decks, that's the safest place for you to be while we try to navigate through this storm. So they all go back down for a minute, and then there's more storm and more craziness, and then they all come back up and they're like, we don't believe in your leadership ability as the one steering the boat. You're doing a terrible job and you should be fired and all this sort of, and they start laying into him as if it's his fault that the boat is in this massive storm, which maybe he had bad navigational skills, but we're going to learn more about the storm in just a little bit. So it's really not the boatswain's fault that they're in this storm, but they're blaming him and all that sort of stuff. And by the end of the scene, the ship is wrecked. It's sinking. It's being ripped apart by the storm, and pretty much everybody assumes that they are going to die. So it's a nice like attention-grabbing way to start a play with a massive storm and a shipwreck. So then Act 1, Scene 2 starts out with Miranda and Prospero. Miranda is Prospero's daughter, and we're going to find out a whole lot more about who Prospero is in the next couple days, because Prospero likes to talk. I've played Prospero. Prospero likes to talk. So anyway, we've got Miranda and Prospero, and they're on this island that just happens to be nearby to where this storm happened and where they saw this boat. And Miranda says to Prospero, if by your art, my dearest father, you have put the wild waters in this roar, allay them. The sky, it seems, would pour down stinking pitch, but that the sea, mounting to the welkin's cheek, dashes the fire out. Oh, I have suffered with those that I saw suffer. A brave vessel, who had no doubt some noble creature in her, dashed all to pieces. Oh, the cry did knock against my very heart. Poor souls, they perished. Had I been any god of power, I would have sunk the sea within the earth, or ere it should the good ship so have swallowed, and the frotting souls within her. So, Miranda's a little bit shaken by the shipwreck that she just witnessed happening out there. She saw this horrible storm, and she saw this shipwreck, and she thinks that it was her father who created the storm, because we're going to find out shortly Prospero is versed in magics. So she's like, Dad, if that was you that made that storm, stop it. Like, there was this boat and all of the people on it are now dead. And this is really upsetting and disturbing to me to watch a whole ship full of people die over there. Like, if I had any say in it, I would not have allowed such a thing to happen. And Prospero's like, don't worry, nobody got hurt. And she's like, but the shipwreck. And he's like, don't worry, nobody got hurt. I have a little story that I need to fill you in on. And she's like, well, you've always sort of hinted at stories before. And he's like, yeah, we get to the story in tomorrow's monologue, because really it's all exposition, and it's one of Shakespeare's sloppier ways of getting all the exposition out. But we're going to get to hear a lot from Prospero in the next couple days as to why this storm happened, who he is, who Miranda is, and who the people on the boat were. So hang out a little bit longer, come on back tomorrow, and we will continue on with the Tempest. I'll see you then. Mwah.